Zephon, your visage becomes you. It's an appropriate reflection of your soul.
Zephon is an important recurring character in the Legacy of Kain series, and is arguably responsible for some of the series' greatest nightmares. The fifth created of Kain's vampire sons, he served as one of the chief lieutenants of Kain's empire, and as such, he acted as a boss enemy in Legacy of Kain's Soul Reaver. He returned in Soul Reaver 2, which showed his origins as a human Sarafan warrior, and again positioned him as something of a boss encounter. Zephon was born as a human at some point in Nosgoth's early history. With vampire numbers rising sharply, the Sarafan Vampire Hunting Order was formed to counter this threat to human populations, and Zephon joined the order, rising to become one of its commanders, alongside comrades Melchiah, Rahab, Duma, Turel, Raziel, and Malik. When Zephon was in his late 20s, and the Crusades of the Sarafan were at their peak, he joined the other commanders on a daring mission to reach the retreat of ancient vampire Janos Audrin and assassinate the so-called father of the vampire race. To achieve this, the Sarafan lieutenants followed in the path of a blue-skinned wraith, actually a future version of Raziel, as he opened the passageways to reach the top level of Janos' Aree, and once he reached the top, they ambushed the pair. Janos teleported the wraith away, facing the commanders alone. But they came prepared with Mobius's vampire-disabling staff, and after a protracted battle, they were able to subdue Janos before ripping out his heart, which they believed to hold the source of the curse. They also stole the Reaver, the holy weapon of the vampires. Assured of their victory, Zephon and the other commanders retreated back to the Sarafan stronghold. However, this great victory for the Sarafan was to prove their undoing. As they retreated, the Blue Wraith followed, seeking revenge, and their assassination of Janos had also provoked the ire of legendary vampire Vorador. Both infiltrated the stronghold, and while Malik tried to hold off Vorador and protect the Circle, the Wraith was channeled into a gauntlet run of the other lieutenants. Zephon and his comrade Melchiah were the first to confront the Wraith in the cloister courtyard of the Sarafan stronghold, but even with their forces combined, they were no match for the Wraith, who had already recovered the Reaver. Zephon and Melchiah put up a brave fight, but in the end, they were defeated by the creature, and Zephon died on the floor of the courtyard. But this wasn't the end of his story. After his death, Zephon was memorialized and turned into a martyr by the Sarafan and successive vampire hunting orders that sought to lionize their victories. And a mural of the Sarafan commander Zephon was added to the chapter house of the stronghold, paying tribute to Zephon and his brothers and their sacrifice. Zephon's body was interred in the tomb of the Sarafan along with the rest of his fallen brothers in arms. And there he lay for centuries, until the vampire Kain infiltrated the tomb. Kain had recently learned of a method to raise his own vampires, and he entered the tomb and exhumed the bodies of the Sarafan. Breathing his life force into the corpses of the long-dead warriors, he was able to snare their souls from the underworld and resurrect them as a new generation of undead necromantic vampires. Zephon was the penultimate Sarafan commander that Kain raised, and in time, Zephon went on to raise his own lieutenants and subordinates, giving rise to the vampire clan known as the Zephonim. The Zephonim were one of the clans that waged war on Nosgoth in the names of Kain's empire, along with the Razielim, Turelim, Dumahim, Rahabim, and Melkahim, and they were notable for their talents of stealth, deception, and manipulation. As the undead necromantic vampires rose, they proved to be an unstoppable force, with fallen humans able to be raised once again as bloodthirsty vampires. In a last attempt to finally defeat the vampires, the humans came up with a plan of breathtaking ambition: to construct a monumental cathedral designed to blast a deadly hymn fatal to vampires. But such a colossal undertaking could not be kept secret, and the vampires allowed the cathedral to be built before the Zephon clan cruelly took the structure as it was finished, murdering its human guardians and claiming the structure as their own. Lore left over from the development of multiplayer Nosgoth even suggested that the cathedral was infiltrated by disguised Zephon vampires long before it was completed, and when the time came, the Zephon simply revealed their true forms and began a massacre. Either way, the silenced cathedral became Zephon territory, and its upper reaches the realm of Zephon himself. It was only a matter of time before humanity was inevitably routed, and within a few decades, Nosgoth was firmly in control of the vampires, and humans were a domesticated species, reduced to a single city. In this new golden age, the vampires enlisted human slaves to build a new renaissance, and the new age truly began. But for the leading vampires like Zephon, the conquest of Nosgoth was just the beginning. Over time, each vampire would eventually enter into a pupation state, emerging with new gifts. Over the centuries, Zephon would have gone through several of these pupations and begun to develop the first insectoid traits. But with these gifts came a new foe: arrogance and boredom. With no external threats, the leaders of the Council of Kain's empire came to view themselves as detached and above the affairs of the lesser vampires. As the clans below them struggled to gain an edge over each other and compete for favour, so the council members would foster or foil plots at their whim for entertainment. Eventually though, a new excitement would emerge as Raziel, firstborn of Kain's lieutenants, evolved before Kain, growing a pair of bat-like wings. Zephon and his brothers were called to a council meeting where Raziel unveiled his wings. But Zephon's immediate reaction to this presentation was unclear, as was his reaction when Kain ripped Raziel's wings out and ordered his execution. What was clear was that Zephon did nothing to stand against or protest the decision. If the law of multiplayer Nosgoth was followed, then shortly after Raziel's execution, Kain disappeared, travelling through time to meet Raziel and only occasionally stopping in on his path to meet with Raziel and restore Nosgoth. But with the Emperor gone, this left a power vacuum in the Empire. In this wake, Zephon keenly manipulated the other lieutenants, and was the first to suggest that they would be following Kain's orders if they were to put down the Raziel clan and divide the spoils. His suggestion that his clan should benefit the most from his idea proved to be the spark of conflict between the clans that led to a full-blown civil war in the Empire. Though outright warfare was forbidden under Kain, the clans regularly struggled under the surface for superiority, each competing for small advantages over the other clans. And the Zephon particularly were known for using ritual torture, alchemical engineering, and genetic manipulation to drive their evolutions, devolving them further into insectoid forms and heightening their powers to include exotic disciplines such as shape-shifting, illusion, invisibility, mind control, and infections. It's unclear how much the vampire territories shifted in the Civil War, but Zephon and his clan clearly maintained their hold on the silenced cathedral. The distraction of the vampire civil war led many humans to break free and start an organised resistance to vampire rule. The re-emergence of a band of pupating Razielim led to vampires discovering the human rebellion and reuniting in the cause of the Empire, but not before Zephon once again suggested the extermination of the Razielim clan as heretics. But this time, he couldn't deny their value in a war against the humans. And so a new war between vampires and humans began. The so-called War for Nosgoth. During the war, the humans made a daring strategy, striking at the heart of Zephonan territory with their full force, mounting a siege on the silenced cathedral and attempting to retake and utilize it for its original purpose. Fierce fighting broke out in the lower levels as the humans pushed for a final victory once again, and the vampires banded together to desperately defend the realm of the Zephonim and prevent its deadly usage. Ultimately, it seemed the humans' attack failed, and Zephon remained in control of the cathedral. It's unclear exactly how the war progressed after this, but it would seem that this was the high point of the human resistance. When Raziel returned as a wraith centuries later, he travelled to the cathedral after encountering Kain at the pillars, and used the Wraithblade to unseal its outer doors. Within, he discovered the Zephonim still in control of the cathedral, but they were now devolved into spider-like arachnid forms, stalking prey by climbing on walls and ambushing them. The Zephonim were also assisted in this era by a band of human vampire worshippers who resided within the building. The cathedral was still subject to human resistance efforts, but these were little more than low-scale infiltration efforts by disorganized vampire hunters compared to the full-scale assault seen in the War for Nosgoth. As Raziel ascended the cathedral, he reached Zephon's chamber in the upper reaches of the building, and discovered that Zephon too had followed an insectoid evolution, resembling a praying mantis or a xenomorph queen. He was much larger than any of his brothers, and he had grown to encompass and embody entire chambers of the cathedral, with his sphincter-like muscles controlling access. He towered over Raziel with his sizable claws and several sets of massive insectoid legs protruding from the ceiling, and surprisingly, an egg sac beneath, which produced eggs despite the apparent sterility of the vampires. Raziel's conversation with Zephon was dripping with rivalry and disdain. Zephon denounced Raziel and illuminated a little of the instinctual state of the insect mind. Zephon proved a formidable foe, impervious to most of Raziel's attacks. However, Raziel was able to take advantage of the previous incursions by vampire hunters and a nearby flamethrower to set Zephon's eggs on fire and throw them back at him, igniting the younger vampire and setting him aflame. And so, for the second time, Zephon died by Raziel's hand. Consuming Zephon's soul provided Raziel the ability to climb on certain walls, an ability which he would use to climb beyond the sanctuary of the clans and discover the newly uncovered tomb of the Sarafan. There, he found out the shared Sarafan heritage of he and his brothers, before travelling back in time. Zephon may have finally found rest. But it was not the last that Raziel would see of Zephon. As with the rest of his brothers, Zephon was seen in several different states, showing his progression from a human and evolution as a vampire. But these were not shown in chronological order. His first appearance was as a vampire along with the rest of the Council of Kain's Empire, in the FMV introduction to Legacy of Kain's Soul Reaver, although his appearances there are relatively brief compared to the other brothers. In this appearance, which is the only time Zephon's normal vampire visage is seen, he was designed by Glyphex artist Boyd Lake, with his form adapted from Raziel's to give the lieutenants a unified look, although each was given unique design flourishes, with Zephon notably having risen hair and chitinous patterns on his skin. The evolved or devolved vampire Zephon was the next to appear, featured as the third boss of the game and the second of his brothers fought by Raziel, although indications from prototype builds suggest that the progression order of Soul Reaver was reshuffled during development, and Zephon and the Silenced Cathedral were originally intended to be experienced straight after leaving the Necropolis and defeating Malkaya, before encountering Kain at the Pillars. Zephon's boss battle underwent several changes in the course of development, as the developers experimented with ideas on how it would work. At various points it had open side chambers that looped back to the top of the room, open side chambers with soul spouts to assist healing, and with the side chambers closed off. Zephon's appearance is largely consistent across different prototype builds, although he does gain yellower eyes for certain builds. Close examination of the textures for Zephon's chamber also reveals several Zephon Impu painting and other egg textures present. In early prototypes, Zephon's boss battle was not meant to have been Raziel's final visit to the cathedral. Along with the deleted Sound Reaver Forge, Raziel was originally intended to return to the pinnacle of the cathedral at the end of the game to unblock the pipes and use it to wipe out the vampires. This appears to have gone through several changes itself before being discarded completely, and in early prototype versions, extra rooms can be accessed behind Zephon's head, which lead upward towards the top of the cathedral, culminating in an untextured room believed to represent the pinnacle. The presence of high-quality renders of the pinnacle suggests that the implementation of the section was debated when the cuts were made. Early prototypes also had the climbing ability gained from Zephon be much more versatile and consistent with how it was seen used by Zephonim vampires. The symbol of Zephon and his clan appears to be somewhat representative of the posture of the Zephonim vampires, appearing to represent a spider-like pose. The standard is seen on numerous clan banners and symbols, and can be seen as a form of brand or tattoo on the chest of the Zephonim vampires. The standard is generally seen as a black symbol on a grey banner, but the symbol can be seen in a number of different contexts. Like Malkaya's symbol, Zephon's symbol is first seen in white in the intro, but this changes to black on the in-game banners. Zephon's change here is even more pronounced, as in the intro, the banner is a pale green rather than grey. Alongside the clan banner, Zephon is also represented in a more symbolic fashion on the Soul Reaver title screen, with each of the faces representing a boss character or Sarafan brother, although not being straight depictions of them. The figure in the bottom left represents Zephon. In earlier versions of the game, the clans didn't have their formal names, but used appropriate codenames, and at this time, the Zephonim were codenamed Wall Crawlers, with Zephon himself being Wallcrawler Boss, emphasizing their insect-like ability to scale walls, an ability that Raziel would later gain and use for himself. Later on, as the game progressed, they were given more fitting angelic-based names, with Zephon's name meaning a looking out, one that sees, or alternatively, God has hidden. The name is applied to several biblical characters, including a king that would rule as a predecessor of Rome, a cherub and guardian prince of paradise, and an angel that was sent by Gabriel to find Satan. Notably, in some recountings, he becomes a fallen angel, whose duty was to fan the flames of hell. Zephon didn't directly feature in the cancelled multiplayer Nosgoth, which was set in the mid-Soul Reaver era. However, he was mentioned in its background materials, which developed and laid the groundwork of the vampire civil war and the human-vampire war for Nosgoth, while Raziel was in the Abyss. In these works, Zephon and his clan were portrayed as secretive and manipulative, with a range of deceptive powers, with them also deliberately channeling their evolutions through ritual torture, alchemy, and supposed breeding programs, apparently referencing the sterile eggs produced by Zephon. Zephon himself was directly noted in these materials to have been the one that suggested the eradication of the Raziel in the absence of Kain, and the subsequent division of the spoils. And his suggestion of his clan gaining the lion's share of the rewards being the spark which set off the disagreements that led to the vampire civil war. When the pupating Raziel returned to alert the vampires of the human rebellion, Zephon was also notably the first to call for their blasphemous line to be wiped out once more, although he was talked down by the other council members who recognised their value. These suggest a certain degree of mutual disaffection for Raziel and his clan, reflecting the acrimonious mocking of their meeting in Soul Reaver 1. Due to its cancellation while in open beta, the lore of Nosgoth is of disputed canonicity. When Raziel went back in time in Soul Reaver 2, it would be the earlier human Sarafan versions of his brothers that would take precedence, and Zephon was among the brothers represented. In the chapter house of the Sarafan stronghold, Raziel could find a mural of the human Zephon. Here, Zephon notably resembled his vampire self, with a similar slicked back and raised hairstyle, but it was notably a different colour to his vampire portrayal, showing his natural hair and helmet plume to be a bright red. In the mural, Zephon was armed with a sword as his primary choice of weapon. Later in the game, the Sarafan Zephon would make an appearance. He was first seen as one of the commanders storming Yanis Aldrin's retreat, and was later featured in the semi-boss run at the end of the game, as Raziel stormed the Sarafan stronghold with the Reaver blade. Here, he would be encountered in the courtyard of the stronghold, along with Melchiah, and it was revealed that Raziel was behind the original human deaths of the brothers. In the scene, there are several parallels to Zephon's later vampire character, with both he and Melchiah having inhuman eyes, hinting at their later inhuman devolutions. He also bears the same grey-coloured chainmail as his clan banners, and has the Zephonin clan banner on a sash, suggesting that the symbol's association with Zephon predated his vampire existence. The souls of Zephon and Melchiah, like those of the rest of the brothers, absolutely cannot be consumed, at the express intention of the developers to avoid a paradoxical situation. In the sequence that they are featured, Raziel is given the Reaver, which binds to him in such a way that it prevents him from taking damage, consuming souls, or shifting to the spectral realm. The Lieutenant's souls are of a unique design compared to the rest of the souls in the game, and they quickly fly up and away, as if destined for something more. Outside of the games, Zephon makes appearances in other media and artworks. His devolved vampiric form can be seen in the Soul Reaver comic. His regular vampire form appears in the Vorgeschichte comic found in the German official guide. And both of his vampire forms appear in the Defiance comic. Various behind-the-scenes artworks also depict Zephon in different states. The devolved Zephon can be seen in Soul Reaver concept art by Arnold Ayala. Soul Reaver 2 concept art depicts the Sarafan Zephon in full armour, notably using green chainmail, mirroring the Soul Reaver banner colour change. Glyphex artist Boyd Lake showcased the original Lieutenant Zephon model, showing him scaling a climbable wall. And both Boyd and series artist Daniel Kabuko have displayed reinterpretations of the character in the years after they left the series. We hope you've enjoyed these lore bites. Join us next time for more Legacy of Kain lore.